All right, welcome everyone. Got quite a few numbers of people here and a pretty packed agenda, so we'll just kind of get started if that's all right with everybody. First of all, we acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle-Walyup area, and we recognize that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. And I also acknowledge that we meet here today on land that was never ceded, and I wholeheartedly support the many campaigns for truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation, both here and across this country. Now, if you haven't been here before, I'll just warn you or tell you that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live online. And while all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question may be captured in the recording. So do so at your own peril. Do attendance, apologies, and leave of absence. I don't have any leaves of absence in front of me. Are there any requests for leaves of absence from elected members? Seeing none, we'll go on to disclosures of interest by members. I have one here from Councillor Slaughter. Did you want to just disclose an interest, Councillor Slaughter?
As per my submitted form to the Manager of Governance, I have a conflict, sorry, you've caught me off guard because impartiality interest in item C260314. And yeah,
Great. And with the impartiality interest, you'll be staying in the room, participating in debate and voting on the item. Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Thanks. I have an impartiality interest disclosure as well for ARIC 26035, tenders awarded under delegation because a tender was awarded to Beer Farm and I've worked for them in the last 12 months. That's a decision that's already been made, so I'll be staying for that.
Great, thank you. Any other disclosures of interest? Thank you. No? Wonderful. Seeing none, we'll move on. We've got responses to previous public questions taken on notice. So those are contained in the agenda. If anyone has any questions, you can refer to what's printed in the agenda. And now we move on to public question time. We have a few speakers for public question time. So we'll start with them. If you haven't spoken before, you have 3 minutes to speak during public question time. At that point, there'll be a little alarm that goes off. And we just ask if you haven't finished your comments that you just try to wrap up as quickly as you can if you hear the alarm. So we'll start with Emma Livesey. Great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emma Livesey. I'm the convener of the Hilton Precinct. I wanted to speak briefly on the proposed use of the public art funds associated with the Coles development in Hilton. Over the past few days, I've shared this proposal with the Hilton community, and while it's only a small sample given the short time frame, the feedback has been consistent. People are disappointed that the funds may be used outside of the suburb of Hilton. So comments include things like it does not make sense that the funds are going to Beaconsfield instead of Hilton itself, and that it is not enhancing Hilton, which the money was designated for. More broadly, there is a strong feeling that these funds should directly benefit the community they were intended for. From my perspective, we've discussed these funds within the precinct meetings for the past 2 years, but there hasn't been meaningful engagement with residents on how this can be used within Hilton itself. Given that, I don't support the proposal in its current form. I'd ask that this be seen as an opportunity to pause and properly engage with the Hilton community to co-design something that reflects local identity and delivers real benefit within the suburb. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement and also for all the work you do at the Hilton Precinct. Next, we have a minor celebrity up to speak, former Councillor Aidan Lang in the gallery.
It's a bit offensive, just minor.
Let's hear what he has to say first.
Sorry, it's in green.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Look, I was drafting this speech the other night and I caught myself thinking, I'm drafting a deputation debating the merits of building a free bike path in one of the fastest growing, most congested pockets of South Fremantle during a fuel crisis, during a climate crisis. and also during a bridge construction. I had to pinch myself. This is not logical. This goes against our council decision. This goes against the Bugs position since 2014 or longer. This also goes against the first pillar of our community strategic plan. And this goes against what this council has historically stood for. But here we are, debating the merits of not installing a free bike path. So tonight, just three things. I want to remind you all how we arrived here. I want to highlight some questions. I don't want answers. Maybe you guys can ask those questions. And I want to debunk some wild statements. 2014, the Bug put this path on their key strategic plan. November 2023 would have been Councillor Williamson Wong and Councillor Dawson's first or second council meeting. An amendment was made to have this bike path attached to a lease. Doug Thompson at the time said, "The only thing I like about this is the bike path." Have I used 3 minutes? Okay. Whoa. Doug Thompson said, "The only thing I like about this is the bike path." I honestly believe that evening, if the bike path wasn't amended to that item, I don't think we'd be standing here. I don't think that car park would have been built. So now we're here this evening, we're looking at no path, or we're looking at an amendment to actually pay for the path ourselves. How do we get here? These are my key questions. We're told there's low usage on the path. How was that conclusion made? Has anyone verified the City of Fremantle's own data? We've got a bike counter right next to that site, and there's a photo of it in these attachments. Where are the easier and more direct entrances mentioned throughout the report? Will the addition of a bike path increase illegal camping and dumping issues, or how will it? Why was the first pillar of the city's strategic community plan not considered in the report, particularly the connected city objectives? How was it concluded that there is no demand for additional pedestrian route? And how was limited anticipated use determined? How much vegetation will actually be cleared? These are some of the broad statements throughout the report that need to be challenged. How does a path have the potential to facilitate antisocial behaviour? Has the council used its own data from its own bike counter on the footpath to verify the independent report? Has the Bug been consulted? And why has future use of the area been overlooked? So they're the main pieces I wanted to debunk this evening. These questions need to be asked. The gradient at this site is comparable to Milburn Path that we built last year. No vegetation removal is required, in my opinion. And Hollis Park is actually one of the busiest routes in and out of Fremantle. The demand exists. It's in the attachment. There's a heat map here from Strava. You can see that it is clearly one of the busiest walking and cycling routes. I don't believe this idea that 8 to 12 people use it per day. I vaguely recall the Metrocount data stating maybe 200 to 300 people per day will use this path. This is the last mile that allows people to safely walk or ride to the shops instead of driving. It's safer, it's more convenient. Building more car bays means more cars, and that's what we've got at the moment. More footpaths would bring more walking and cycling. Quick note on the alternate recommendation. I'm concerned there's a section in there that may allow or may result in restricted access. One of the gates may be able to be closed. I think it's 1C. And I'm also not happy that we're paying for it either. So elected members, just take note that this has been on the agenda since 2014. This was amended in 2023. This is 16 years. Tonight is a critical juncture. I think if the path is dismissed this evening, it's conceivable it could be 10 more years before anything happens. So it's a reminder to the older, more experienced elected members that this has been on our radar for a while, and to the new members that it's very easy for an item to get caught in the backlog of council for over a decade without any action. So we just want a bike path. Thank you all.
Thank you, former Councillor Lang. You did say that those were statements, not questions, or were you wanting reply to those questions?
I just wanted some constructive criticism of that, or an opportunity for council to maybe ask us questions. So staff may answer some of them.
Okay. Do you want to answer those? We'll just take them on notice and we'll get back to you. Great. Next up, we have Isabella. Wonderful.
Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Smith and I'm also here to support the bike path. I'm a resident of South Fremantle. I live on Hickory Street, which backs onto the Hollis Park bike path. I just also like to question the data from my own observations. The path is extremely busy in the mornings before 10 a.m. and after 4 p.m. And I do question the data that's come up with the conclusion that only 8 to 10 people are using it a day. I'm also, from my readings, it seems like that's quite old data, so it would be really good before these types of infrastructural decisions are made to have up-to-date quantitative and qualitative data. But I'm just here tonight to speak on behalf of the local community, which is to say that accessing that shopping complex from Jura Road or from Hampton Road is extremely dangerous and extremely scary as a cyclist or a pedestrian or anyone with reduced mobility. So we're asking to have a more holistic view of transport and infrastructure routes in Fremantle, which, as per the community strategic plan, prioritises active forms of transport. This seems like a really important opportunity, and I ask you to take our concerns very seriously and implement this bike path. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, Rob. Great.
Hi, my name's Rob Wall. I was involved in 2013, 14, 15 with the Bicycle User Group, where we did a fair bit of strategic network planning on the bike network with Sam Wainwright was a key member and a bunch of other people. And the council was quite supportive. They helped us in that they gave us some drafting help, and they had a GIS expert within the council put our sketches into a GIS layer, which they had, and I've got a copy of that as was emailed to me in 2014 from Stuart. I'd just like to hand. Because that's a screenshot I took yesterday of the GIS layer, which I was sent, and it was trying to show a whole bunch of bang for buck type things that the bug thought should be done in the greater area to build this network. There's a couple of paths and a whole lot of intersections and places where we felt in 2014 that money would be well spent. And it's interesting that short section of path heading north into Woolworths, without the car park extension, just into the legacy car park, was on that as a key thing. So that's kind of the evidence that this isn't the new idea that's cropped up. And I was cycling and walking the other day just to try it. And certainly from the south and east, which it's awful riding up Hampton Road and past the service station and in. That's really bad as a cyclist, as the previous speaker said. And even if you're lucky enough to be coming from the ocean, from the west, the logical route then would be to be on the nice east-west path, past all the lovely trees, and then you turn left down, I think it's Daly, the first street. It's a very, very steep descent. It's much steeper than the proposed bike path, actually. And then you've got a funny sort of back route into the Woolworths past a whole lot of bins and cars, and then you're in the midst of a very busy bit of the car park near Aldi, so that's not a good route either. It's all possible, but we've got the opportunity here to build a fairly short section to have a really nice route into the area. And I spoke in support of Sam's motion 2 or 3 years ago, and in this very room, and at that point I understood that we had a developer being prepared to pay for something that we'd wanted for 10 years, and we went away from that meeting feeling like we'd had a win. Now, a few years later, I feel like the car park's been built, the developer's got the benefit of that, and they've given nothing back. And now they're saying, well, I'm a bit confused about the correspondence, but the belief seems to be that they're trying to get out of it. Just final thing I'd say is I walked the proposed route the other day, and it doesn't go past a cliff. The logical route goes kind of to the side of a cliff, and it's not as steep as Daly Street. It's quite easy to walk, and it would be a lovely riding thing. And I'm quite concerned that the landowner had a consultant put in a report which shows a cliff. And I don't understand why that's there, because to me that if that's deliberately misleading, that is actually illegal. You can't put something deliberately misleading in a planning application, and that there's very heavy financial penalties for that. So it's just a final thought as a member of the public who doesn't do this for a living. Anyway, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wanted to speak during public question time? Yeah, please come up and just give us your name and the item that you're going to speak to.
Hello, my name's Lonnie. I am a resident that lives on South Terrace, and I am here to comment on the bike path as well. I am extremely privileged in the fact that I have an e-bike. I average probably about 100 kilometers a week, and that includes going to and from the Woolworths. Woolworth Shopping Center, it's the closest one, that sort of thing. If anybody's actually ridden a bike through the pathway to go to Woolworths and go down Daly Street, if you're not on an e-bike, you can't come up that hill, period. Even when I have like a full thing of groceries, I kind of have to slalom back and forth and go into a low gear. It's kind of ridiculous that there's not an easier way to go through that. If you're hiking with groceries, it's inconvenient. If you have a bike, like I said, if it's not an e-bike, you're getting off and you're pushing it up this hill when it's 35 degrees Celsius outside, not really what you want to do. I mean, there's been times where even me, I'm just like, I'll just hop in my car just because that hill sucks. So if nobody's actually gone and tried to ride a bike to the Woolworths, I really do recommend that you do that because you'll see exactly why this bike path is needed. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other comments for public question time? All right, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda to petitions. I understand we have one petition, and Julie Murphy would like to speak to that and present it to Councillor Kamado.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm actually presenting this on behalf of Di McGinn, who is unwell tonight, and so she couldn't be here. So I'm going to read out, she had prepared some words, and so just pretend I'm Di for the first bit. So good evening, everyone. My name is Di McGinn. I live on Hampton Road, very close to the school crossing, just past Stephen Street. Every day I see two very different realities of this road. The first is a reality of neighbourhood life, as it should be. Parents with children, people walking dogs, people with prams, older residents, people riding bikes, and people with limited mobility. Hampton Road sits in a part of Fremantle that is close to schools, shops, cafes, parks, workplaces, and other important community destinations. It should be a place where people can move around safely and confidently on foot or by bike. But the second reality is very different. Too often, Hampton Road, and I'm speaking in particular about the north one here, she is, feels less like a local road and more like a divisive barrier through the middle of a community. Cars and trucks dominate while pedestrians are left exposed and unprotected. People are forced to wait for gaps in continuous traffic or become stranded on narrow, medium refuges, trying to judge whether they can cross safely. This is especially concerning for children, older people, and anyone with reduced mobility. This lack of protection is felt even at the school crossing, where there have been times when no replacement warden has been provided. Although the speed limit has been reduced to 50 kilometres per hour, the design of the road still encourages speeding, aggression, and unsafe driver behaviour. The road environment continues to favour vehicle movement over pedestrian safety. This is why this petition matters. The more than 900 people who signed it are calling for sensible, practical, and long overdue improvements to Hampton North. They want a safer and fairer balance, one where pedestrians are given genuine priority and protection. I respectfully ask Council to support the outcomes of this petition to make Hampton North safer, fairer, and more humane for the community that lives around it. Hampton Road should not divide this neighbourhood, it should serve and unite it. So that was Di. Now I'm just going to change and become myself. So, good evening, everyone. My name's Julie Murphy, and I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Friends of Hampton and Ord, which is a local residents group. As we just heard, Hampton Road is a vital local corridor. It connects homes, schools, shops, and public transport. But for people walking and riding, it remains unsafe. Although the speed limit was recently reduced to 50, actual traffic speeds continue to exceed that limit and traffic volumes remain high and heavy vehicles add further risk. This is why safer pedestrian and cyclist crossings are urgently needed. These changes are not about convenience, they are about preventing crashes and saving lives. As a local road, Hampton Road is ultimately the responsibility of the City of Fremantle. We recognise, of course, that the City works within a framework that also includes Main Roads WA and Austroads guidance. Importantly, both Main Roads WA and Austroads use safe system principles when considering pedestrian crossings. And both Main Roads and Austroads acknowledge that pedestrian crash severity rises significantly above 30 kilometres an hour. Interestingly, based on the current traffic speeds, so the actual conditions out there, the volumes and mix of vehicles on Hampton North, the most consistent treatment with these guidelines are for fully protected signalised pedestrian crossings, ideally on a raised platform. Now, we're a long way from that. So even though that might be a longer term goal, the current situation falls well short of that, of these best practices, but there are lower cost improvements that could be made now to increase pedestrian priority and safety, particularly near key crossing points like the school crossing. And the City has already shown this can be done on Ord Street several years ago. So we urge Council to fund short-term safety improvements that align with best practices and respond to the very strong community support shown through this petition. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Julie. And please give our best wishes to Di for a speedy recovery. And thanks for organizing that wonderful event to discuss this last Tuesday evening. So did you want to give the petition to Fidel, or do you have a copy, Fidel? Or Councillor Kamara, sorry.
Thanks. And I'll pass that on. Thanks.
Did you want to say a few words about this?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, for coming in, and thanks to yourself and Dee and Di for your comments, and also to the Hampton Road Working Group for the great work that they do and in organising this petition. And certainly I look forward to some positive change along the journey to see Hampton Road North become a much safer area to cross for pedestrians and for cyclists. So yeah, thank you again, and I look forward to handing this on and seeing the results.
Great, and just for folks who may not be aware, when we receive a petition, staff will do a body of work on that and bring it back to council to consider, and then the main person on the petition will be notified of that, and they can come and speak to that as well. So when that work is done, they'll be notified. Okay, moving on, no deputations, no presentations, confirmation of minutes. Can I ask that someone move to confirm the minutes from the last meeting we had here on the 11th of March? Councillor Van Dorsen, seconded by Councillor Graham. All those in favor? Great. All those against? That's unanimous. Elected member communication. Is there any elected member communication? Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I thought it would be good to share that last Monday, gosh, time's escaping me, but last Monday I spoke at the We Are Women Leadership Summit, which the City of Fremantle did sponsor, and that was part of our sponsorship, part of the funding that the City has been providing, I believe, although I can be corrected by the director, in terms of violence against women and the City's actions. We Are Women is a charity that is run by some friends of mine that aims to, well, they're an educational charity for consent education and healthy relationships targeted at young girls. And the Leadership Summit, there were about 50 students from various schools, years 11 and 12, and I spoke about the lessons of becoming a counsellor and a lawyer, which was, funny because it wasn't that long ago. I was also in those uniforms. And yeah, it was a great day. I had to unfortunately leave, so I wasn't able to participate in the workshops, but We Are Women are doing great things, and it was great to see the city support that, and to see so many young women who are excited about being leaders as well.
Great. Councillor Clark?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that a couple of weeks ago I went to the Fremantle Chamber of Commerce, had their CEO roundtable. It was to talk about, it's obviously business focused, and they had about over 30 businesses present in the room, and it was to talk about what is working in Fremantle, but more importantly, what opportunities and what isn't working in Fremantle. And the main point of me mentioning this is that I was really super impressed to have to see our new police superintendent, Dean Snashall, in the room. He was not only there to listen, but to also speak to concerns. And he's also joined the Chamber of Commerce. And I don't think we've ever had a police, there's superintendent come and meet with the businesses firsthand. So that was fantastic. And there will be another roundtable to talk about community safety at the end of April, which I look forward to joining into as well. Thanks.
Any other elected member communication? I'll just briefly mention we had a Perth Southwest Metropolitan Alliance meeting within the past couple weeks, and a few. Well, the minutes will be available for elected members when they're finished on our little portal thing. But the Southwest group decided to make a submission to the Australia Pesticides and Vet Medicine Authority about stopping the first generation rat baits and encouraging the federal government to ban those. And then the next day, like Bunnings announced that they were going to pull them from their shelves, and they moved on. But I'm sure it was because we passed that motion. And another real interesting item that was discussed was a possible path, a shared path from Frio all the way down to Rockingham. It'd be the Catalpa bike path. And this is the 150th year of the Catalpa escape from Fremantle Prison. So if we can get that done across several local governments, I think that'd be really amazing. It'd be a really great year to do that. Great. So seeing no other elected member communication, reports and recommendations from officers. Now, seeing as we have some folks in the gallery that were here to speak about an item, I'm going to change the agenda. We'll move that item, or I'll ask someone if they want to move the Daly Street item first, so we can debate and discuss that while we have folks in the gallery. And that would be item number 19. Councillor Williamson-Wong moving that, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Great, and I'll just note there is an alternate recommendation in the additional documents on this item as well. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I'm happy to move this item, but to talk about why I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation tonight. Hollis Park Path is an important connector in South Fremantle. Not just for the South Fremantle residents that we think of being south of Juro Road. We all know how bad I am with geography, but also the South Freo residents and North Coogee residents to provide safe access to the shopping centre. It's been on the Bugs agenda since 2014. I remember we talked about this on one of my first ever council meetings, and I remember saying that the lease terms we were debating was half a Jemima, and it would be extremely disappointing to see a bike path be on the bicycle user group strategic plan for a whole Jemima, which is what would likely happen if we say no or if we don't support the bike path tonight. There's been 12 years of advocacy. And I guess I also have questions that were raised by members of the public and old councillor Aidan Lang in terms ex. We know how I feel about ages, everyone. Why am I saying this? Oh, the path is thoroughly used. I use that path all the time. And I also think that the points made by Rob Wall were important. Daly Street is far steeper than the path we're proposing, or that is potentially going to be constructed to connect the shopping centre to Hollis Park Path. Daly Street's steeper. There are many streets that are steeper that we build footpaths on all the time. Whether that's in Freo or broader Perth metro area, there are many streets that have steep footpaths. Hollis Park Path itself also has a further steep section further towards the beach, and people cycle and people run and people walk up and down that path all the time. It's true that the shopping centre is well connected if you are in a car and you want to get into the car park, but it is a dangerous route for pedestrians and cyclists. I'm lucky that I can walk there from home, but it does mean negotiating very tricky intersections, and the roundabout at the top of Duro and Daly, which is on one of the the entrance point for cyclists or for pedestrians, is extremely confusing to navigate. And you often feel like you might, you are just kind of jumping in between cars and hoping someone's going to stop for you and doing all of that sort of stuff. It's a small path, and I think it can be easy for us to think that it's not worth it because there are other connections into the shopping centre. But the truth is that the other connections aren't easy, aren't safe, and are not preferable. And if we want to be encouraging people to cycle, to walk, and to do all of these good things that we have said we're going to support, then putting in this small path is going to go a very long way. So I will open the debate with that. I think it's important that we support the construction of this path. I know that there is an alternative rec by Councillor Sullivan, so thank you for drafting that, Councillor Sullivan. I'll let you speak to that. And I guess I just would raise that there's not that many opportunities we get to unlock a very important small piece of footpath or dual use path in the city that would make a big difference, and this is one of them. We've been asked for a long time, and the Humich group are currently under a legal obligation to deliver on that path, and they're asking us for a lease variation. So it's half strategy, and also, we're not under pressure to not build this or to not make them build this because their legal obligation is to build it. And I think Councillor Sullivan has also raised questions around planning approvals and conditions, and the fact that this means that they're in breach of that. So that's their own, these are their own issues. I don't think we should rush into a decision about varying a lease when we do in some ways have the upper hand in saying, well, you committed to this too. We all committed to this. Both parties committed to it 2 years ago. And so prove to us exactly why we should vary it. And I don't think they're proving to us why they should vary it at all.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Given that I've got an alt rec, what I might do is ask a series of questions now, and then let others join the debate, and then come back and potentially move my alt rec as part of me speaking to this motion.
Yeah, that sounds great, but I think because we have moved this one, we'll have to vote this down and get to the alt-rec. But you can proceed how
That's fine. So I'll ask the questions anyway. And I did raise a number of these questions in writing earlier on, so they won't come as any surprise. One of the ones which was also asked by former Councillor Lang was whether or not we have the bike counts that used to be collected. I don't know if they still are, but do we have the bike count information?
Through the chair, so we do have bike count information going back to the end of 2024, so measured the year of 2024. Following that, the counter that you see at the moment is actually vandalised and not in use. But looking at the data from 2024, average daily traffic for bikes was 224, and then average daily traffic for pedestrians was 63. The other data provided in the report was commissioned by the lessee, and that's where those numbers from.
Thank you. Yes, varies significantly. A really important question is, when the original application came in, the lessee had done a lot of environmental work to try and determine whether the land could be used for the purpose they were hoping it could be used for. But they refused to share that information and that process that they were going through with Department of Water and Environment with us at the time, as you'll recall. So, and I can understand why they did that before they got a lease. But now that they've got a lease, and now that there was an obligation to build the path, has the city been given the information, aware of the information, a party to the information, and the processes that have been gone through with DWER? Do we have that information, and also can we use that information if the alt-rec was to get up?
Through the chair, so the lessee obviously went through all of those processes as part of building the current car park, and they did achieve all of those approvals. If we were to continue with the construction of the dual path area, we would need to continue those investigations. So they have not been done as part of the initial investigations that were done by the tenant.
So they've only investigated the building of the car park. They've had 2 years to investigate the building of the dual use path and go through that with DWER and with the land that is identified as the licensed area as well. Did they at any stage progress any conversation with DWER about building the bike path up the embankment?
Through the chair, they had originally scoped the inclusion of that area in the environmental management plan that they had done for the first part, the car park area. However, the final environmental management plan only included the car park area.
Wasn't the lease requirement for the environmental management plan to include all of the areas? Wasn't that the intent of having the licensed area?
Through the chair, so the reason that the lessee has come to us now is that they've made this request prior to commencing those investigations. So that they're yet to start those investigations or go through that process for this part of the leased area, which is the dual use bike path. But obviously pending this decision, if they were to be required to continue with the construction of the bike path, they would have to commence those processes, go through those processes now.
Is that also the case with the area that's identified as the additional lease area, which is the area that doesn't yet have a car park constructed on it, but was added to the overall lease at the time of negotiating the bike path?
Correct.
Sorry, so it's correct to say that they haven't done they haven't got the environmental clearances to do any work on the additional land or the licensed area?
Correct.
So the presumption is they still have to go back to DWER to build the additional car park and could do the licensed area and dual use path at the same time if the lease conditions were maintained.
Correct.
I think that's probably all of my questions at this stage.
Kind of feels like a courtroom in here for a moment, whole interrogation. And look, we don't have a formal policy on this, but general practice has been that I've been on this council. If you vote against an officer's recommendation, you give your reasons for that. And I'm inclined to support the alternate recommendation that Councillor Sullivan has put forward and vote against what's before us right now. And the main reasons are what we heard from the gallery during public question time, but also for me personally, this bike path was a large part that got me over the line to approve this when it came before us initially. And I think it would be a great connection for our community and it would get used. And having a bike path or, paths for pedestrians and bicycles for me is not just one path that everyone gets funneled into, it's having a network. And this, I think, would be a great part of that network that hopefully we get to build. So I'll see how the debate goes, but right now I'm inclined to be voting this down so we can hopefully consider the alternate recommendation. Any other comments on the item? Councillor Kamado.
Yeah, I'll make some comments. Look, I'm certainly all for having a bike path. I think, you know, this has been in the process for a long time, and appreciate the Gaydon former councillor Lang coming in and speaking on an issue that I know he's very passionate about, and obviously he had a lot to do with putting this in place. My concerns were, after reading the report, the cost, the difficulty that was highlighted in the report with putting this park in place, and also and when I talk about the cost, and this is a question, I suppose, whichever way you look at it, we pay for it because the rent's being held back to pay for the path. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so this is money, this is basically council money that comes to us in one way or another. So I'd like to see it invested prudently, and I'm happy for the path to go ahead in future. So if this is voted down, and if I voted for the officer's recommendation, I'm likely to vote with the alternate, as silly as that sounds, because I would like to see the path put in place, but again, I'd like to see it done. I would only like to see it done at a sensible rate, and I think we have other priorities in the city, including other areas where we need to invest for cycling and pedestrians, and I do wonder if this should be prioritised ahead of those. So I'm on the fence, as you can tell, but that's probably where I'll leave it for now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kamada. I've just been informed that we were in error. An alternate recommendation can be moved during debate. So my apologies for getting that wrong to start with. So if there's a seconder, the alternate recommendation can be moved at any point during debate. But if you speak, Councillor Williamson Wong, I think you close.
I've
Unless
got a
you have
question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Question for staff in terms of the cost, because I agree it seems like an extraordinary amount of money and an extraordinary grade of a path that we are that's in the report in terms of being proposed, lighting, handrails, etc. And while these are important accessibility pieces of infrastructure, I'm interested to know whether that's proposed by the Humich group as the grade that they want to install it, or where that comes from, because the rest of Hollis Park does not have the same level of, it's not built to the same grade. So I'm wondering why exactly all of those things are introduced, which I imagine is part of the increased cost.
Through the chair, my understanding is that those items were identified in the planning conditions.
So a question back would be, that would mean that it would be possible for us to amend those planning conditions and take out those pieces of infrastructure as required, and so they could just construct a path similar to what's already existing.
Possibly, yes.
Okay, let me ask a further question. If we're amending planning conditions, that would be outside of varying a lease, I would imagine. So confirmation is yes, that would be outside of varying a lease. We could go back and change planning conditions so that the path that is constructed doesn't have the bells and whistles that it currently is quoted at having.
Yes, Director Kingdom.
I think I'm on. Yes. Through the chair, the planning condition was quite broad. It put the onus on the applicant to build it, but it was to the city's satisfaction. That will come down to what level of risk the city would be prepared to take in terms of engineering, gradients, handrails, noting that the previous path would have been built to different specs. So I will defer to Graham at some point to answer that, but the planning condition doesn't get in the way of this. It comes back to what quality of path the city's prepared to take in terms of future risk.
I have a further question. I'm trying to think about how I'm going to phrase it. The question is, if it's not a planning condition and it's not a lease condition and it's a city's satisfaction and risk issue, then isn't there a risk already with the path? And why would that not be proposed as something that needs to be fixed? The risk is existing. I don't see how we would be creating an extreme level of risk that requires us to light and handrail. Handrail perhaps because of the steepness of it, but the rest of the kind of specifications, I'm curious to know how the city sees that fit in with the existing path network that doesn't have any of that.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, the current plan that you've got in front of you was proposed by the engineering team. We did commit to looking at it and challenging it and thinking whether or not we couldn't reduce the scope and take on some of that risk, and that's a piece of work that we'd be happy to do subject to the outcome of this resolution.
Great, thank you. Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. Most probably just carrying on from that, and with the information that's come from the extensive questions tonight, which have been really valuable. When this lease and planning approval was provided, was the intent of council to connect and have a path in place, and that's what we mean to do through this. And I think, picking up on the director's point, we should, and this design, which in lay terms is quite over-engineered, we should come up with a design which is suitable and fit for purpose. So I am very happy for us to go back and find something that is reasonable, noting though concerns in regards to the potential preliminary investigation from an environmental perspective and decontamination. I'm assuming in those costs there's a significant plus or minus value that is built into that, and that may actually be more significant cost for us. But I think we can work around some of that, and particularly considering that if the issues are associated with contamination below the surface, bringing in some fill and covering those areas can make a significant difference rather than having to excavate out areas and remove contamination. So, I don't support the officer's recommendation, and happy for us to come up with a better design that meets the intent.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dorsen.
Thank you. I don't support the officer's recommendation on this either, and thank you for everyone coming tonight, to particularly former Councillor Lang for reminding us of the history. And I do recall this coming to council not long after I joined. I do firstly have a question in regard to the lease terms, which include a restriction on paid parking. What is that restriction, and do they charge? Is it a paid parking facility? Thank you.
Through the chair, that just means they are unable to charge the public to park there.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Yes, I also do question the costs that have been put forward and the fact that they've costed something to meet to the city's satisfaction, which to comply with all the gradients and infrastructure and what we would want to see. But I'd also like to consider potentially, in most like development application, a proponent comes to us with a proposal and they get their own engineers to, so suitably qualified technical experts, engineers, to help them prepare a plan, and they're potentially design solutions that could be found to address what have you. And that's generally what people do to get costs down. You don't always need to meet the strict compliance requirements. There's other ways things can be achieved, which I'd like us to give them the opportunity to potentially put forward, and our engineers to assess as well, consider, not putting the burden on our officers and engineers to come up with an alternate model. I think it's really up to the proponent to come up with an alternate design for us to consider that may reduce costs on their parts, but be satisfactory from a safety, gradient, or relevant. That would be assessed. But I do think the onus should be on them to do that. Yeah, and just generally don't support it. I just feel like that big thing that stuck out is that grossly misleading data they've provided as part of reasons not to build this path. It just really undermines the trustworthiness of what they're putting forward. But notwithstanding, yeah, would be happy to consider something else that they put forward. Thank you.
How about Councillor Clark? I think you just beat Councillor Williamson Wong to the buzzer.
Sorry. No, I never. Yeah, no, I don't support the officer's recommendation either. I concur with a lot of the comments that have happened here tonight. This is a heavily used area. It's an essential part of where we want to be, and we need to, well, first of all, we had an arrangement with a developer and an agreement. It may be over-spec'd, but suddenly, not so far down the road, they're trying to change the arrangement significantly and with information that just doesn't add up. These are, I think that we need to continue to support the place that we want to be, and bike paths is an essential part of that in Fremantle.
Is this another question, Councillor Williamson Wong?
Any questions? I promise. My question is about the costs of the path. Going on from what Councillor Kamado raised about the money and where we choose to spend it, it would be my understanding that we've already made the choice to spend our money on this by reducing the amount of rent that we charge as part of this lease agreement. So I wonder, increasing the annual rent by $5,000 doesn't seem to me as if it would make up for a path if we over-engineered it as proposed, or otherwise. Can the director give us some understanding of why the annual rent would only be increased by $5,000 if we take on the cost of constructing a path versus reducing the rent by $5,000 so that they construct the path? And also with the understanding that they haven't obtained the necessary consulting reports and approvals from DWER through contaminated sites, which would be a lot of money, as Councillor Mothman pointed out.
Through the chair, so the additional $5,000 is only for the additional leased area, so that small portion to the southern end of the car park. The cost of the construction of the dual use path is to be recovered from the equivalent rent from the entire leased area, including the entire northern car park. And we've estimated it would take approximately 10 years to recover that cost, as it's currently estimated.
I've got one more, sorry. Well, not really, sorry. I'm just going to keep asking questions. This is a lease variation proposal, which obviously as a party to the lease, Humich Group can ask us to consider. If we as a council don't believe that they've made their case in terms of why varying a lease is important, and this item was to be either deferred or voted down, let's go with voted down, what would the implications be? Could they come back having done more work in 2 weeks, 2 months, and ask us to vary it again?
Through the chair, we could certainly go back to the proponent and request more work to be done.
Through the chair, I think we are understanding council's sentiment at the moment, and I think if you want us to go back and do more work with the lessee, then I would recommend we defer this item for the moment.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, and that's probably where I'm about to head as well, but I'll speak first and then move either an alt-rec or a deferral. I did want to touch, I guess, on my understanding of how we've got here, because I think that it's fair for all of us to remind ourselves, but also for the community to have a clear understanding. Obviously, we didn't initiate the idea of a car park in that location. The shopping centre owner came to us with a proposal. I recall the debate that we had in here, and in fact, I went back and watched it this afternoon. As I think was stated in public question time, Councillor Thompson said it wouldn't even be considering this if it didn't have the bike path. And quite a few councillors were of a similar view. I certainly made the argument quite strongly that utilising this piece of land in that way at this point in time was something that I was pretty unsure about and wasn't really all that supportive of. And that is one of the reasons why we reduced it to a 10 plus 5 when the developer originally asked for a 20-year lease. I and other elected members were not prepared to lock this site up for a very long period of time. And there was also concern raised, and considerable concern raised, about the loss of vegetation, not at the southern end, but at the northern end. And that I think there was a sense of a quid pro quo that if the bike path could be included, perhaps we could be a little bit less aggrieved about the vegetation at the very northern end in what was called the pot handle or whatever. And that is because so many people could see the significant benefit of expanding our green plan, and expanding our green plan, including the pathways, opens up areas which are then much loved by community and become spaces that community wants to go in and do further works, bushland planting and the like. And the only reason that has really occurred up in Hollis Park is because there's a dual use path going through there, and having a connection through to the shopping centre would probably free up an additional area, particularly the embankment on the north side of the Hollis Park path, which now has 35-year-old mature, almost as mature as me, because that's when I planted them, Rottnest Island tea trees and the like. And they are much loved already, but unfortunately just by homeless people. They could be much loved by the broader community if we could make those spaces available. That is a space that was never part of the tipping area of the park. And by having a pathway going down into the shopping centre, we may well actually, I think, improve public safety in that area, improve access to bushland, improve the way in which the community looks after these spaces. I actually think that the lessee has the wrong idea that this is a problem. I actually think this is a solution. The cost issue, when it was originally discussed, the lessee basically talked about the path costing about $40,000 plus $22,000 of environmental investigation. So the cost, and I think that's, I actually did a costing myself the other day, and that matches, to me, the sort of cost that the rate books, the construction rate books give you. So it certainly doesn't need to be $170,000. I think it could be under $100,000. And if it was under $100,000, and we're getting, I think, are we allowed to say how much we're getting? It's in the public record. 22,000 or something, 21,000 plus another 5, so it'll be $25,000 a year, so it would take 4 years to pay off, and we still have 6 years of income coming in. I actually think that's a pretty reasonable amount, and as was stated before, we've already agreed to the principle of that in this chamber. We can agree to another principle, or we can actually say that's the principle that was already agreed to, and we should move forward with it. I would also note that the lessee agreed to this. So the process that we went through on the 8th of November meeting in 2023 we set about that this is what we wanted to achieve. That was essentially our proposal back to the developer in negotiations. You know, they put forward a proposal, we put forward an alternative proposal, they agreed to an alternative proposal with a bunch of conditions, which we then subsequently agreed to. That's basically your contract. We've got a contract. We don't need to breach the contract. They certainly don't need to breach the contract. Unfortunately, they're already in breach because they haven't built the path. And they're also in breach of their planning approval because they haven't built the path. So we are in a situation, you know, using Donald Trump's words, is I think we hold all the cards, not the lessee. We're being asked to, you know, do something fairly radical and changing the situation. And I'm happy to do that if it is the best way forward. But I'm not convinced yet that it's the best way forward. As you know, I've submitted an alt-rec. I've submitted another version of the alt-rec. And this afternoon, having gone through even more of the legal sort of implications, I submitted yet another version to the director to try and sort of cover the legal concerns that I was having with things like the DWER processes and the ability for us to get the information out of the lessee that already exists and to essentially take over the process of building the path without it basically having to start from scratch again and the like. I don't think I'm ready, and Councillor Williamson-Wong sent me an email as we were talking with further suggestions. I don't think we're actually ready to make a decision one way or the other, either to vary the lease or to take on the project ourselves. I think that would be unwise. I think the best way forward would be to defer it, as the CEO has actually recommended, and actually give an opportunity, while we do hold all the cards, for the lessee and ourselves and DWER to sit in a room and the the engineering team to work on what the implication of making any changes are, and try and come back to say, are we ready to deal with the breach of planning approval? Are we ready to deal with the breach of the lease? Are we ready to allow more development and the like, given that there is a breach, etc., etc. So I did actually draft a deferral, but I think probably the officers had a deferral in mind. So I might just simply ask the CEO, do you have a recommendation for a deferral? Because my email was not actually in a deferral terminology, but I'm sure you've probably come up with one.
Through the chair, I'm happy for just a procedural deferral motion to go up to allow officers and the lessee to negotiate an outcome that sees the tenant actually still undertake the works required of the lease and the planning approval.
Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I wasn't intending to say anything, but because my good former mate Aidan Lang's in the... I don't want to let him down without having a few words. I don't think I actually ever supported this proposal. Yeah, I see I voted on it. Yeah, that surprised me, Aidan, so I've had to really think about that. Look, I just want to ask one question to start with, if I can. Clarification on the usage. Now, in the photo that's been presented, the counter looks like it's on Hollis, the dual-use path. Is that right? So there's no count then on what goes down to the shopping centre development. So all this...
No path.
So, so 250 people a day aren't going down to the shopping centre. They're going between Hampton Road and Marine Terrace. I just want to point that out. You know, it sounds like it's getting used more frequently than Daly Street, but car park. But anyway, it's not. Look, the problem with this site, as we know, and I'll side with the engineers on this one, it's an engineering nightmare for a bike path. And I think this is what's the reason that's held it up most probably more than anything. And I think it's always going to be an engineering nightmare. Because if the council build it, yeah, and everyone around this table knows, it's going to have to be built to Australian standards. Now, you throw in an Australian standard into some of these things, and this is what you get. You get increased dollars, you get everything else. So, look, I just want people to be mindful of that. This isn't an easy project. I understand where the bike people are coming from. I mean, it's not something I'd ever use because I don't have to. But the cost is 177 stated. Well, I can guarantee by the time, if this project goes ahead, you'd be most probably looking well at 300. So, it sounds like a deferral's coming. So hopefully in that deferral period we can have a better look at costings. Otherwise, in the Councillor Sullivan's alternative, I wouldn't have supported the inclusion of the budget process at the moment until we get better clarification on costs. And I think the deferral will do it. So, Councillor Oldmate Aiden, I will support the deferral.
All right, and Councillor Sullivan had turned off your microphone, so did you have further comments to make or from earlier?
Simply that I had asked the CEO what the deferral would look like and then didn't get the opportunity to move it. So it's now on the screen. So I'm supposed to, I think, move it at the time I was speaking.
It can be moved anytime. It shuts down debate.
So you'll need to adjudicate on that, but I'll let Councillor Slaughter speak first.
Okay, great. Councillor Slaughter.
Thank you. As you know, there's a very large number of attachments to the agenda this week, and my notes say keep the path, change the design, and that is where I stand.
Very good. Okay, so we've got options in front of us now. Well, one on the screen there, and we've got a motion before us. So
I have a question. Surprise, surprise. If we're deferring it to not change the lease, why would we not just vote the item down? Because to negotiate that the lessee construct the path is to leave the lease as it is right now, isn't it? So, I mean, it's like a legal governance procedural question, but this is the same as voting the item down, but we're asking staff to negotiate in the next 2 weeks to provide us. I'm not really sure what the outcome would be in 2 weeks other than exactly as the lease stands right now.
Through the chair, I think this just allows officers and the tenant to have a conversation about how it'll be constructed and what we would do, and then come back and have a further conversation with council about that.
Great.
Yes, look, I'm happy to move it that way. It's not perfect in my view, but I'll move it because we've discussed it for a fair while.
Is there a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Kamada. As procedural motion, the mover can speak and the seconder can speak, and then we'll vote on it. Do you have any?
Yeah, I won't speak long. I just wanted to point out, I guess, that I would hope that the CEO would kind of, approach that with a fair degree of flexibility. It may well be that we still have a situation which is a change in the lease and a different outcome. But I think it's important that the lessee understands that changing the process now, it could have significant consequences. And before we change anything in the lease or the planning approval, we need to know what those consequences are, and they need to come to the table fully prepared to allow us to understand those consequences. And that means sharing. That means sharing the advice, the DWER process, what is the difference between them doing it and us doing it, etc., etc. They're the conversations that I think need to be had, and it gives the opportunity for the staff to really have a look at and perhaps even have conversation with elected members out on site as to what is actually feasible and achievable, so that we can get this done for the least cost and the most benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Kamada, did you want to comment on the deferral?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Yeah, just my hope is that the conversations are held in good faith and that we do see a result where the path can be built, but at, you know, it's let's have it built sensibly at a cost that, you know, is not going to force me to have to go against it. Simple as that.
All right, so now we have the deferral for the item 19 before us. All those in favor of the deferral? That's unanimous. All right, good work, everybody. Woo, we got through one item. We still have someone in the gallery who was here who spoke on the use of cash in lieu of public open space. That's item 17. So I would like to go to that item if possible. This is the Hilton Park cash in lieu for public art. I ask someone to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor Van Dorsen, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Any discussion?
Thank you. Yes, I did move this, but I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation on this. But I did move it for discussion and to hear from everyone else. So this one is about a POS contribution paid by a developer in Beaconsfield and a public art contribution paid by a developer at the new Coles development, I think it was, in Hilton. Now, so my issue with this proposal is really around the public open space contribution for Beaconsfield. In my view, developer contributions, so ultimately a developer contribution for this subdivision in Beaconsfield, ultimately that cost would be borne by the people who buy the land there, would be my assumption, is kind of my thoughts on it. The developer themselves wouldn't, bear that cost. That would be passed on to as a cost of subdivision when they sell the land, and so the future owners of that land. And I just have quite a strong opinion that developer contributions, when they're made, should benefit the people who've bought for that area. So if you buy a house there and ultimately you have paid, or a developer has made a contribution for public open space, I feel that should be spent on either the public open space within the subdivision or very close to it, so that the people that have paid for it ultimately can benefit from that, or the local community in Beaconsfield would benefit from that. But what we're looking at tonight is a proposal to use those public open space contributions for master planning Hilton, which is not the same suburb. So on that basis alone, I wouldn't be supporting it. The public art contribution, similarly, it's a public art contribution. It's in Hilton, in the area, going towards a master plan, which it's noted may include public artwork, but I feel a public art contribution should be spent on public art. There's nothing sort of in here putting this into the master plan broadly. I don't know if there was anything specifically saying it has to be spent on public art. But again, in good faith, or just, I think when a developer pays a public art contribution, there's an expectation it would be spent on public art. I don't know if that's the way it's done with council. It's I'm not party to I haven't been on council very long, so I don't know really how those funds are spent, but that's how I think they should be spent. So, yeah, that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dorsen. Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. I've just got a few questions, particularly picking up on some of the points that were raised in the public gallery earlier. And so I'll just run through those questions in the first instance. So the Hilton Park Master Plan and this work in and around that northeast corner, if we weren't using these funds, how would this be funded otherwise? And how common is it for funds for public art to be spent, outside of the location where those funds have been generated from as well? So have we got any examples where a similar kind of instance has occurred where some distance away from where the development is, the public art funds have been spent?
I'll ask the director to respond.
Through the chair, thanks for your question. So the proposal for expending the funds in that area is about 500 yards from the Coles development. It is outside of the existing policy, planning policy for percent for art, which our policy outlines a clear area in the Hilton High Street area. So that's why we're bringing this to council tonight. The decision behind putting that proposal forward was thinking through the most amount of community access to the space, and thinking 10 years ahead from now, how that space will be, how that the public arts work can be accessed. It's a tricky business, public art design, and experience shows us that putting it in a place that is easily accessible by the greatest amount of people is probably a good component of the design element. And in terms of the location to the proximity to the development is as I said, within 500 yards.
Yeah. And sorry, just I'm not sure if it's a question for the Director or Director of Infrastructure in regards to if we are developing there, how would this be funded otherwise if this wasn't the funding source?
I'll pass to the Director of Planning in a moment, but the public art funds are in addition to existing funding for the project. So the cultural space and the community space is already funded. So the public art cash in lieu funds would be to provide the artistic element of that community space.
Yep. I think that's been answered, most probably. Yep. Yeah, we'd have to source other funds if we were going to do that work, essentially. Yep. So you were saying that that precinct area has funds allocated, and this is in addition to that, and would be if we didn't source other funds, then clearly it wouldn't occur.
The public art element.
Yeah, the public art element.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the community space and the infrastructure and the landscape
part of
still good. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. So I'll just speak to this now, and it's a bit. Yeah, I'm a bit in between on this, and I think we normally encourage our officers to be able to fit square pegs in round holes and try and make things happen. And I understand exactly what officers have tried to do here and brought together two disparate pieces of funding to try and create a greater good, if you like. And I suspect the aggregation of those two means that it's greater than the sum of its parts. And if we did have two separate pieces and or, noting one's in regards to art and one's public open space, these aren't huge amounts of money. And I'm thinking, in regards to the public open space, there's $158,000 there. I'm not sure what we would actually be able to get for that. And then the Hilton Public Art is circa $100,000. I suppose my concern is, and the report was somewhat dismissive in regards to how well that area was assessed in and around that Coles precinct itself, and just said it was assessed and it wasn't suitable. Maybe just before, or just as I close, just as a final question on that, what was the criteria that was considered as part of that assessment, and why is that area unsuitable?
Through the chair, so a couple of things. We did spend a fair bit of time looking in that area. There's an acceptance around the engagement with public art and how you can physically engage with it. So looking to around the Coles development, and I go there regularly, and we've been there a bit with the staff. It's difficult to find a location where you would place an artwork where you can foresee people spending time and really engaging with it. It's a busy area. So that was in part our thinking by moving to this open space, which will which will also have a whole lot of other budget connected to it, which will create this community amenity, which will be a comfortable place for people to gather and sit and engage with the work. So that was the thinking behind that.
Can I ask a further question on that? So from the Coles across the road where the coffee and barber shop is, there is a little kind of courtyardy area where people sit and eat their lunch. Was that part of the assessment? Because it seemed, I think people kind of linger there naturally right now. And if so, why was that deemed not suitable?
Sure. Through the chair, a similar answer. I think an open public space which contains the type of amenity that we're talking about in the design through the Hilton Park Master Plan, which also contains the public art element that we're talking about, will just be a superior space to spend time and gather. And I think 10 years from now, if we're looking down that lens, we'll probably see more community use of that space and engagement with the work. I don't particularly see people spending a lot of time even in that space that you're talking about, because it's a busy shopping area, it's a walk-through area, it's a drive-by area. It's just not necessarily what we see as the most viable space for the most amount of people to enjoy it.
Thank you. Councillor Slaughter.
Thank you. I would like to speak to this item for the same reasons that Councillor Van Dawson raised, and for that reason I won't be supporting at this point the officer's recommendation for either of these points. Particularly for number one, I wholeheartedly agree with what Councillor Van Dawson has said about funds, the cash in lieu payment for open space and improvement works. That is key to people's decision to buy in a certain area, and if that public open space is outside of the area that they've bought in, it's a disincentive for people to stay in the areas, play in the areas where they live, exercise in the areas that they live. I know they're close by, but it's still, there are open spaces planned for the Lefroy development and, the Jean Street area, and it can be improved with the amount of money that is set aside. It's not so large as Councillor Laughlin has pointed out, that you can do something magnificent, but you can still do something. And in terms of the cash in lieu of public art, I've had numerous local residents express their concerns that, they've been waiting a long time for the public art to come from the development in Hilton, and again, build it and they will come. There's plenty of people who are still using that area. We've seen in the public art strategy that we want different types of arts in different types of areas, whether it be long-lasting, shorter works, all different types. And so I think we still can get an artwork or some kind of public art that is more in line with the expectations that were considered in the planning approval for use in that specific area.
Thank you, Councillor Slaughter. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. Well, I am going to ask, if possible, that we can move it in parts, because I think, for me personally, I have a different view on both the public open space development contribution and the art contribution, mainly due to the geographic distance between the two. I do think that when we have developer contributions that are for public open space, in particular, it's important that that money is spent where it was taken from. And while I agree with Councillor Moughlin that we're not going to get something big and grand for $165,000, as we've just discussed, a small footpath for 170, I do agree with Councillor Slaughter that there will be opportunities for that money to go back and be invested into existing open space close by. So that's my position on the public open space development. I think with the public art cash in lieu, I feel comfortable with that money going to Hilton Park, and the reason being that I agree with the comments made by the director that while that placing an artwork at Hilton Park allows for people to interact with it, I guess, in less of a rush than they would be at the shopping centre. And it would, of course, be nice to have art everywhere, but if we have one opportunity to place art, I do think Hilton Park is a good outcome for that artwork. So I would ask if we can vote on it in parts, and that's my thoughts on those.
The answer is yes, we can move them in parts. Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks. I've just got a bit of a question to ask first in relation to the artwork contribution policy, which only applies to certain areas. The city centre of Fremantle, the Hilton Town Centre, the North Fremantle Town Centre, and the Shumich shops, strangely enough, and that precinct, but doesn't apply anywhere else. And I'm thinking in terms of a bunch of developments that, we know are going to happen in Beaconsfield. There's a whole new shopping centre potentially coming in Beaconsfield, and yet that area hasn't yet been identified as a % per art zone. Neither has Knutsford Street. Neither has the Leighton development wasn't identified for % per art. So in the item that is preceding this, is there a likely intent that we're going to review the contribution areas so that there are potential funds that come from developments like the heart of Beaconsfield that would be probably more appropriately utilised to fund a proposal just up the road?
Through the chair, so as part of the action plan with the public art strategy, we've identified the need to review both the local planning policy 2.19% for art and also possibly write a new draft for public art policy itself. So we will be reviewing those conditions.
Can I just do a supplementary on that? It might be the Director of Planning. % for art policy in WA is limited that there has to be identified contribution areas. I believe that's the case. We can't just apply it across the board to everything or everything over a certain amount of money or whatever. So is that the case, and that we would need permission to apply it to specific areas? And is it the planning intent from the state that % for art be used in nodes effectively?
Through the chair, I'm not sure that it would be restricted to spending the money in nodes, but you're absolutely correct in terms of you need a plan to identify where money can be spent. And as Director of Arts explained, we'd be reviewing that as part of % for art to look, do we need to take a broader approach to where you can gather the funds and spend it. So that piece of work is coming soon.
I think you meant where money can be raised.
Raised and then spent, yep.
Through the chair, if I could just add to that. So it's done in different ways across different LGAs, as you would know. In Melville, for example, it was just simply split into 4 quadrants. So a development in any one of those quadrants, the cash component could be spent anywhere within that quadrant. So it could be quite a distance from the development as long as it was in that particular area.
Okay, so I'll have my say now. I actually have problems with both of 1 and 2. To some degree, a little bit less so with 1, and I'll explain why. The subdivisions occur all the time, and there's quite a lot of subdivisions, coming forward in that sort of bottom of Jean Street area. Obviously, the one that's been built right now. There will be more of those over time, but also even over on the west side of Hampton Road and the like. So there's a lot of development in those areas. There's also a lot of subdivision and development in the heart of Beaconsfield. So there are quite a lot of opportunities for potentially for cash in lieu, although you know, most of the developers these days are probably putting the open space in their developments at the moment rather than coughing up the cash. And so we're seeing a little bit of that, and also basically arguing that they'll give us, you know, 5%, but they'll do really great parks with the other 5% of the money and things like that. So, but I think in terms of the precinct that we're looking at, there is a lot of opportunity for future parks, but it's also, I don't want to get into a park war competition, but there are a considerable amount of smaller and bigger parks in the area already, and also schools and the like, and a lot more opportunities to create them as part of development than perhaps exist elsewhere in more congested environments. That said, I raised in our informal meeting that I was, you know, I have been trying to get a park in the older part of Beaconsfield for years, and that's what these sort of funds would help fund. But the amount of money that's in that bucket is about 1/10 or 20th of what we would need to actually secure a piece of land for a park at the sort of top end of, or the western half of Beaconsfield. And so it's not really going to help anyway. So I'm less worried about one. On two, I do worry that as it currently stands, money is raised in these small precincts, these nodes, with an expectation of public art, where I do accept the argument that was made that the Hilton shop area is difficult, but difficult often is the backbone of what creative artists love. Working in a blank landscape is actually difficult. Working in a confined, constrained, complicated, messy, confronting environment is often exciting. So I don't think it's completely out of the question that we could achieve an artwork in the Hilton shopping area that basically screamed at the people in their cars, what fools you are for driving through this area so fast, or whatever. And so, but I also really like the ideas that are coming forward for the space and the type of space that I know the staff are working on. So I want to see that funded, but do we fund it this way? And that's the dilemma. I don't know. So if I don't know, I shouldn't vote for something that locks us in.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other comments? I'm just, again, item 2 on here was really line ball on, and I think it's just a bridge too far for me to support that one tonight, just because the funds were in Hilton, and Hilton Park is technically in Beaconsfield. And just given what Councillor Sullivan had just said, I think that the challenge can be met and possibly achieved within, you know, closer to where the funds were raised. So that's probably where I'm at on that one. But are there any other comments on the item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move these in parts. Oh, Councillor Van Dorsen, did you wish to close?
Yes, just briefly. Just to address some of the comments, just particularly around that it not being much money, just to clarify that I would rather see, whilst a small amount of money be put aside for potentially small parks in Beaconsfield. There isn't enough of those. It's actually surprising with Fremantle has so many little pocket parks. Beaconsfield does not. So if there was any opportunity to sort of look for creation of those in Beaconsfield would be my preference. And also really agreeing with what Councillor Sullivan said, I'd like to see, if you're putting this to us to use those funds for Hilton Master Plan, Hilton Park, I want to see what is that money being spent on, not just going into a pot of money for what. And Councillor Sullivan sort of said they're working on things, but yeah, it's kind of what are you doing there? And if there is an expectation from the community, and and people are aware of this contribution for the Hilton Shopping Centre and when's it being spent, yeah. Anyway, I'll be sticking with what I said. I won't be supporting either, but happy for it to move in parts. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll put part 1 for a vote on the officer's recommendation.
jumped in.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, after listening to everyone.
Van Dorsen closed debate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. Yeah, it has been a long one. So we'll put part 1 for a vote. All those in favour? And that's Councillor Graham, Councillor Kamada, Mayor Lawver, and Councillor Sullivan. All those against part 1? That's Councillor Slaughter, Councillor Moughlin, Van Dorsen, Councillor Clark, and Councillor Williamson Wong. So that was split 50-50. Wait, no, sorry, that carried. That carried. Yeah, 5-4. Never mind. We can't split. We have an odd number of people. Yeah. No, that all those. Sorry, yes, that was lost. Sorry, it was voted down. You are correct. We had, yeah. All right. Whew, so I'll learn to count before the end of the night, I swear. Now we'll move part 2 of this. All those in favor of part 2? Councillor Graham, Councillor Williamson Wong. All those against? Councillor Slaughter, Councillor Moughlin, Councillor Kamada, Councillor Clark, Councillor Van Dorsen, Councillor Sullivan, and Mayor Lawver. So that also was lost. Wonderful. That's 2 items done on our agenda. Seeing as there's no one else in the gallery up for any other items, we will, starting at not item 1, what item number is it? Item 13. And this isn't really not a controversial item at all. We do have one proposed amendment on this item, but can I ask somebody to move item? Councillor Williamson Wong, seconded by Councillor Graham. Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thanks. I'm going to be brief. It is just going out for public consultation, so thank you to staff who've done the work on this and also for pulling together all of the past, I guess, mentions of dogs in past community consultations. It's really good to see that we're going back into that log of data to inform this plan. I'm very happy to see this come forward. I know that we're going to get a lot of conversation about it, and I also thought that before, I thought I would open debate and note that there is the amendment on the agenda tonight that I'm not really happy to support. I think that my first gut instinct is that prohibiting dogs from playgrounds makes a lot of sense because dogs don't need to be in playgrounds. They don't need to use the slides or be on swing sets. And we have heard multiple times in the public gallery and public question time that there is a tension between small children and dogs. And so I do think that that is an important clarification in our policy or change in the policy. That being said, I know that there are differing views. I would urge councillors that we leave it in for the time being so that the public are able to provide questions to a prompt about something. If we take it out at this moment, that we are less likely, I guess, to get comments around whether or not the community is also on board with having dogs in playgrounds or not, because there won't be anything to prompt them into thinking about it, and then we might end up in a place where people come back and say, well, why isn't this included? I don't want dogs in my playground, or I do want to allow, etc., etc. So I understand that we're not all going to agree on whether or not dogs should be in playgrounds, but I urge councillors to leave it in while it goes out for public comment and for us to revisit this when it comes back to us for endorsement.
Yes, Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, I also would like to acknowledge the officers' work in this. Dogs have been around for a long time and they've been a bugbear of the council, I suppose, for a long time as well. So a lot of work's gone into it and good luck to them. This is going out, as we know, just for public comment, and I agree with Councillor Williamson Wong. I would prefer to see that 5 metre rule left in for the sake of the public comment. On a prima facie case, I don't have a problem with it, but I'm sure a lot of people may. But I do think it's sensible to keep it in because that's what the officers came up with in their assessment, and it appears as if it's a bit of a standard around other local governments. So let's see what the people say.
Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. Acknowledging this will be complex for us to deal with, and we, well, actually, may or may not, actually, because I think the officers have done a very good job to deliver a set of documents which are consistent with other local governments in and around Perth, and they work very well and provide a framework which is understood. And to that point, to flag and happy for us to have that debate in regards to the inclusion or otherwise of the playgrounds in the policy which is going out for public consultation. But I think what we would actually do by removing that prior would be that it makes it more complex for us to have that conversation with our community. Putting it out there, as Councillor Williamson-Wong said, notes that there is a potential for this to be considered, and people can then comment on that as they wish. And I think it would be a better way for us to consult with our community to have that in the policy and engage on that manner.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, and I concur with those thoughts as well. I very much would like our consultation process to identify the sorts of issues that we already know are a little bit contentious, and this is one of them. And so, part of me goes, well, do you put the more punishing kind of one in your law in its draft form, put it out to the community, see what they say, knowing that a lot of people will probably come back and say, we don't like that bit. We already know that. So what we should be saying to the community as a consultation process is, this is a hard question. Should we or shouldn't we? That's the question. Come back, and all those people that are fearful of having dogs anywhere near playgrounds, let us know the detail of that. And those people who think it's fine to have the dogs in the playground or near the playground, or it's too hard to have them, 5 metres away or whatever, tell us why. That's what the consultation process really should be about. And I know that our engagement officers don't want to have a town hall meeting about it. It would be fun. We've had them before. Look, they're the questions we need to ask our community. And we also need to ask a bunch of other hard questions. And I've raised those privately with email and the informal elected members meeting about things like the responsible control of dogs, which is the way it's worded. I have a different terminology to it. It's the mandatory control of dogs. It's legislated that people control their dogs. They control their dogs while they're on a lead, and they should be controlling their dogs while they're not on a lead. They should be controlling their dogs when they're at the beach. Even though their dog can run off, they should be able to get their dog to come back. Those sort of things. They should be able to control their dog's behaviour. I mentioned, unfortunately, while we were eating the other night, the excreta clause, the issue of urine and faeces. And the reality is we only really police the faeces part of it. And we don't always do that all that well. But dogs walking off lead or even on lead down the high street, basically peeing on the door of a shop or in the cafe or, those sort of environments, in a playground, because the dogs sort of, just run over there. Those are the sort of things that there are a lot of people in our community that have a strong opinion about. And they're the sort of issues that we should be consulting on. And then we should come up with a system that deals with those a little bit better than perhaps what we do at the moment. Because that's why we get so many people always commenting about dogs, is because we're obviously not able to get the right balance in terms of enforcement and relaxation. We all know how much dogs are loved in our community. I sit in a coffee mob that every second owner has a dog, and they're sitting on their laps, or they're not on a lead in the coffee shop, And some of them are unbelievably well trained, and some of them the owners let them drink out of a saucer and eat food at the table and run around and steal the food from somebody else and the like. And I pull my hair out because I just know that, you know, okay, these dogs are a little bit gentle, but except when they get into a fight, and then the owners get all, oh, you know, the other dog owner will let their dog get, you know, into a fight with my dog. And that's the problem, you know. So we do need to deal with it, and I hope our consultation process involves those topics as well, rather than just saying, here's what we're doing, have a comment. You know, this is our really big opportunity to actually get this right and get the right balance. I hope the community help us with that process.
Thank you. Councillor Slaughter.
Thank you. There are two items here, and the first one is in respect to the local law relating to dogs, and I agree with the updating of that and putting that out for giving public notice to update the local law on dogs, because that matches with all of our governance statements of keeping things clear. The second item on the exercise in prohibited areas is definitely more controversial than the local law related to dogs. And I am now inclined to keep the playgrounds clause in so that we can extract that public comment, as mentioned by Councillor Williamson-Wong. However, it also says play spaces, playgrounds and play spaces, including an area within 5 metres, and that's not defined. And I think when we take this out for consultation, that needs to be very clear exactly what we mean. What is a play space? How is it different for city managed assets, so that we can actually enforce what we say we're going to enforce? And that's not really clear. So I expect that we will get a lot of feedback that is more questions than comments. What does it mean? And I think we really need to be prepared for that, and for this to be a really deep conversation so that we can get it right, and particularly around education and how we're going to then present that to the public, whether that be through signage, as has been indicated, that there will be some kind of like traffic light type system of whether your playground, whether your green open space is a playground with on-leash dogs, off-leash dogs. Where does the play space end and the playground start? Who defines what a play space is? Are you, just because you kick a football in that general grassy open area that was an exercise area for dogs in the past, now is it a play space? And who's going to police that? So I think that we really need to have more clarity around what that means, and I hope that that can be achieved through consultation, and that we get this out and then get it right.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kamara.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the reason that I proposed the amendment was because I thought this would be the most contentious part of the policy, and I thank the officers again for the fantastic job that they've done. It's quite comprehensive and it covers all the aspects it needs to. Listening to the comments around the room, my feel is that the amendment wouldn't be supported, and that's fine, because I think the reasons that have been expressed are valid. But I also would like to thank Councillor Slaughter for her comments, because I do agree, and when I looked at that, it seemed quite ambiguous, playgrounds and play spaces, and the 5 metre rule I thought was also contentious. So I felt that we need to have a look at that. And my main concern was that having it in there would mean that we'd end up with a blanket policy, and that's what I'm worried about. However, if it stays in and it goes out for comment, as we know, then that's, my hope is that we land in the right place. So whether I move that or not, do I have to do it now or can I wait?
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment as a dog owner and also as a business owner on High Street that the amount of dogs that we and excrete, both ends we'll say, in front of our store is just ridiculous at times, and that's just my personal experience. But it's really important that we have something that does hold owners to account, and that we do really start cracking down in areas where people are just letting their dogs go. So I'm really looking forward to getting the feedback on this. I know there's a few people in the community who will be looking forward to providing their input. But play space versus playground is a big one for me too, because a playground is something that possibly has equipment, and the defining of that is really important, because you look at a Horrilong Park and you've got playground where there's little kids on their swings and all the rest of it, and then the greater playground, which is the rest of that area, there's kids kicking the ball around, they're running with their dogs, and the dogs are just running amongst them, and there doesn't seem to be any bother. So it's really going to be important to define those two areas for their functionality and how things are managed across there. And also, I'm really grateful that we're looking at the natural areas as well, so that the people who care for those, our staff, and also the friends of groups can have a better chance of maintaining and allowing things to grow better, because the dogs aren't trampling, or their owners aren't trampling going after them. So thanks to the officers for all their work on this. It's great.
Great. And Councillor Williamson Long, if I may make a few comments before you close.
It's a question, but yes, you can go first if you like.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I agree with the idea of creating human-only play spaces. I think people should have a place to go if their kids are nervous about dogs, where they can reasonably expect dogs to be prohibited, not on lead, but prohibited. Part 3 that's before us up here kind of signals to me that we're endorsing the idea that every single playground and play space, that we don't know what that is, we're endorsing that to go out for public comment. It's basically saying that we think we're getting it mostly right. Let us know what you think. Now, I personally believe that that blanket provision is just way too far, and probably invite more conflict than what exists today, because you'll have well-behaved dogs in these areas where kids are, that now parents will ring up and say, this dog is prohibited, and come and deal with that. Now, the dogs that are problems and the owners that are problems are not going to be deterred by some signage that gets put up. So what we're going to wind up having to do, if this is endorsed as written before us, we'll wind up having to fence off all these areas, because ultimately the only way to keep dogs out of them, because it's not a dog on lead areas that we're putting out for a comment, is prohibiting dogs. Now in Hilton, we have 4 parks. 2 of them are dog exercise areas, 2 of them are not. So there's places for people to go, whether they like dogs or not. There's also parents with kids and dogs that like to take their kids to the park and have a run. And at least in one of these parks, Griffiths Park, less than 1 meter away from a revamped play space, we have a dog water bowl that's just sitting right there. So we'd have to move that infrastructure at the very least to accommodate if this was actually adopted. The other park where dogs can exercise in Hilton is Grigg Park. Now there's a playground in one corner. The other corner has a sump, and then there's a basketball/netball court, which I think would be reasonably expected to be a play space. And in essence, we'd be taking that park and saying just no dogs at all. Again, not dogs on lead, but we're saying dogs prohibited. So personally, I think that putting this out for consultation, we're going to invite a lot of really fiery comments, because this does take a lot of spaces where people exercise their pets and basically take them out, again, not just on lead, but prohibiting dogs. And I think if we go with the intent of creating some spaces where people that are concerned about pets and saying, okay, this park would be great for humans only, this one, we'll just leave it as it is. I think a more bespoke approach would be the way forward. But obviously, it's the decision of council what we do, and we're not making a final decision tonight, but we are putting it out for consultation. So if we think that this is mostly right, then we'll hear from the community and then we'll make a final decision later. But personally, with the nebulous nature of play spaces, the fact that we are being asked to pretty much endorse this as a body to put it out there for comment, I'm not quite there myself yet. So that's all I had to say. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. My question is around this clarification about what a play space versus a playground is, and whether when this goes out for consultation there will be a definition attached to that consultation to avoid more questions than comments, as Councillor Slaughter put it.
Thank you. Through the chair. At this point in time, no, but we can include it in our engagement information, providing that, with the feedback that you've given tonight. And our intention is to include something when we come back in regards to a definition.
To clarify, because I think you're saying what I was meant to ask, but maybe didn't clearly do, when we post this on My Say and it goes out for comment through our emails and etc., there will be a definition of play space attached to that?
Not in the policy, but we can add some information around that in the My Say page, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Are there any other comments or is that a question, Councillor Sullivan?
Yes. Look, a question in the same vein. I mentioned about surely with our qualified consultation staff, we can frame the consultation to pick up the issues, including this play space one, and actually do the consultation in a conversational way and say, there are different points of view here. We want to hear about the different points of view. Can we, if I had more time, I would have written an amendment to do this. But of course, we can't do that on the run. But I guess I'm asking the CEO. I mean, it does seem that our consultation processes are flexible enough and intuitive enough to actually make sure that we put out a process that draws out these important conversations, whether it be about, dogs at screening, whether it be about play spaces, whether it be about the process of enforcement.
Through the chair, certainly we can make sure that the community consultation process includes a wider brief than just what is in the policy and local law proposed, and we've certainly heard that tonight.
No other comments on this item?
Well, I will just make some closing comments if no one else has.
That's the question from Councillor Slaughter.
Yes, I just had a quick question. Is there a different word other than endorse that would change? No, never mind. It was a language question around how that was worded. But as it's for the purpose of community consultation, I can just read it differently.
Yeah, it's standard language, but it does have an imply that a little bit. Seeing no other comments, I'll go to Councillor Williamson-Wong to close on the item.
Thanks. I thank everyone for their conversation and comments tonight. I do think actually Councillor Moughlin put it really well, that if we take the playground kind of aspect out now, it would mean that we weren't really being transparent in our consultation, because people might not know that this is something we're considering. We might all hope that people are local government nerds and online watching council meetings, but I would say that the majority of people who would then be upset about our dog policy may have not watched this meeting. And I agree with Councillor Sullivan, our staff are qualified to tailor the consultation, and we also have to place some faith in our staff that have done all the consultation to date. And for many, they deal with dogs issues all the time, and their suggestion to us as staff is that there is a tension that we need to deal with, and that dogs should not be in playgrounds and play spaces. I mean, play spaces does need to be clarified, and I'm glad that we're having that point made now, and that there'll be a definition in the engagement reports when it goes out. But I also, so I'm happy that this is going for a vote as it is. I think that endorses for community consultation is very standard. It doesn't mean that we're endorsing a policy, because when something is endorsed for community consultation, it means that we are asking comments that we can respond to for a final policy. So I disagree with the idea that we're endorsing a policy as it is, or that people are going to be able to take this as something that is in place now and ring us and say there's a dog in a playground and get rid of it, because we all know that that's not how policies work or community consultation. So I'm excited to sit on council while a dog policy is being reviewed. I'm sure it will be a formative experience for all of us who've never done it before. And I look forward to having this conversation again when it comes back to us.
I'm sure I'll be having many conversations about dogs over the next couple of years. All right, so what we have before us is the officer's recommendation on our dog amended law and policy. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Great. That's 3 items down. Okay. Now, if we can move on to item 14, which is the review of the short stay accommodation local law and science hoarding and bill postings model local law. Get a mover from Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Graham. Any comment? Nope, seeing none, we'll put that for a vote. The officer's recommendation. Oh yeah, sorry. All those in favor? All those opposed? Again, is unanimous. Sorry, I just saw the green note about something different. Okay, we might, I might just see if I'll run through some items and see if people want to speak on them, and if not, then ask someone to move the other ones en bloc. The provision of tree maintenance services, nobody. A public art strategy, anyone want to speak on that? Seeing no one. Child safe organization commitment, no one speaking on that. Adoption of the community infrastructure provision, seeing no interest there. Or the adoption of a local history collection council policy. No. Okay, item 22, the review of various council policies. Okay, that's a pretty big batch. We got item 15, 16, 18, 20, 21, and 22. Would someone like to move those items en bloc? Councillor Sullivan, and seconded by Councillor Graham. All those in favor? That's unanimous. And now we are on to statutory reports. Did anyone wish to speak on those items? Oh, you have an interest.
Item 5, it's impartiality interest.
23, 24, 25? Oh.
5 and you were at me.
Okay, great. Oh.
That's okay.
Yeah. So any comments on the statutory reports? Okay, great. So we'll just go through these one at a time. Can I ask someone to move item 23, the statement of investments for February? Councillor Williamson-Wong, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thanks. I did want to speak to this because every month that our reports come to us, I look with excitement and then a little bit of disappointment when I look at our fossil fuel lending, because the percentages seem to be decreasing of our green investments, and it's a really important way that our city supports, doesn't support fossil fuel expansion really, which is in line with the rest of everything that the city has stood for and is in our strategic plan, etc., etc. This month, fossil fuel lending is at 77.2%, and there was a note in the report to say that it was due to a number of green investments maturing during the prior reporting period, with additional reinvestments yet to be finalised before the end of the current reporting period, and that there are 2 key green investments finalised recently. I thought we would just seek a bit more clarification from the director about what that actually means, and do we know what we'll expect with the split in the next monthly report, noting that it's usually, from my understanding, about 60-40 to 50-50 would be the range that we've been sitting at, and also would hope to be sitting at, generally speaking, if I'm correct.
Through the chair, so as you say, a number of green investments matured during the reporting period. There just wasn't any available that met the requirements of the investment policy at the time, and we just missed this reporting period, hence why that split is looking low. However, we would hope to see that split get back towards that sort of 60-40 split that you're used to seeing. So we have to wait until all of that has been locked in and contracted before we can actually give you a better idea of what that looks like. But we would expect that it would look closer to what you're used to seeing in the next round of reporting.
Not seeing any further comment on this item. All those in favor of the officer's report? That's unanimous. We'll go to schedule of payments, item 24, and someone to move that item 24. Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Williamson Wong. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Item 25, the monthly financial report. Get someone to move. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? All right, unanimous. Item 26, committee and working group reports. We're on item 26, which is the working group information report, moved by Councillor Van Dorsen, seconded by Councillor Kamara. I just briefly wanted to mention something on this item because the RAP working group approved 2 new members for our working group. We got another Indigenous elder and an emerging leader that's going to be joining our working group, which is pretty exciting. And the group itself was also really, really keen on looking at Sterling Street. They're kind of by the CBC College and possibly renaming that, given the Governor General had recently declared that there was a massacre, and Governor Sterling massacred some people. So that may be coming to us at some point soon to discuss as a council, but the working group was really excited about that. So possibility anyways. So given Councillor Van Dorsen.
Sorry, just quickly, because North Fremantle Working Group, there was just a report there and I'm the chair. I just want to give a quick update on that. And firstly, mainly just to thank the officers for their work on this and ongoing engagement with the community, which I think is great. I really appreciate that. There was a pulse check done with local community and we got some good feedback on the options that are being proposed in relation to the North Fremantle plan. We just sort of discussed the concept scenarios at the meeting and just note one of the agreed actions was that officers will be bringing a report to council covering the community engagement outcomes and lots of other things. But yeah, thank you officers for your work and looking forward to the next meeting and this one progressing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dorsen. And seeing no further comment, we'll put that item up for a vote. All those in favor? Against? That's unanimous. Now, with audit and risk items, did anyone wish to speak on item 1 through 4? If seeing none, I would ask if someone would move items 1 through 4 en bloc. That's by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Kamada. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Now we're on item 5, the tenders awarded under delegation. Someone to move that. Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Graham. Seeing no discussion. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Overdue debtors report. Item 6, moved by Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Slaughter. And Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, I'll just make a brief comment on this. And for those who aren't regular attenders of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, it was our first meeting that was held in a public forum, so it's quite noteworthy that was the case. However, in having said that, it will take us a little time, I think, to get our groove as to how the meeting runs, because we were behind closed doors previously. We were able to, talk to confidential matters as well as non-confidential matters intertwined, and that was quite easy for us to be able to do as a committee previously. So I think it'll take us a little bit to be able to ensure that we're able to do, speak frankly and openly in the public forum on all the matters. On this particular item, just wanted to call out that the significant reduction in overdue debtors and both the value of overdue debts for the city exceeding 90 days is, as I noted in the meeting, is the lowest that I've seen it in the 6+ years that I've been on the committee and on council, and it's a significant achievement for officers to be able to manage that and to have driven that down. We saw the periods of time where we had significant debts related to COVID and took a long time for those to get cleared. Just appreciative of the work that's gone in to ensure that the city has been able to manage those down to what is, an extremely low level.
Thank you, Councillor Mufflin. And seeing no other comment, we'll put the item up for a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. We have no motions which previous notice has been given, no urgent business except for our late agenda item. Everybody, we're here. Okay. This was put out last night. Everyone I know had a chance to read that. It's a response to Walga's discussion paper on local government electoral reforms. Very riveting stuff. Can I ask someone to move our late agenda item? Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Slaughter. Any discussion? Councillor Mufflin.
I'm going to make a comment. And particularly, it is interesting when you look at the information and how Western Australia may run local government elections differently to the rest of the country. But I think we've largely got it right. And particularly the aspect of a half-spill election every 2 years, I think is a really valuable way in which we retain knowledge and experience within council. And it ensures that we can get the kind of consistency that we've been able to achieve with this council, particularly in the approach that we might have, as an example, in regards to our long-term financial plan, and be able to then plan well into the future and be able to drive changes for the city. My fear would be that if you do have a 4-year spill, that things that council has been working on aligned to strategic plan, aligned to community expectations may just get thrown out, and you end up going around in circles. So I know it's an anomaly compared to the rest of the nation, but sometimes when we do those anomalies, they are there for a reason and they serve us well.
Any other comment? Yep. Councillor Sullivan, just beat you to the buzzer.
I don't know. But anyway,
Unbelievable.
I would just, one of the things that we've been talking about is, what is the need for change? What is the desire to change our system in Western Australia? And people say, well, we're out of kilter with the other states. We should be more in line with the 5 states that don't do it this way. And I would encourage our state government to go and look at local government in those states. And in fact, I would encourage them to get out that wonderful old ABC series, Rats in the Rank, and watch that again to understand, do we really want to end up like many local governments are, particularly in the more central part of the eastern states, let's say, and the northern part. We don't. We have a great system here in WA, and I think particularly in Fremantle, we've been able to be a very stable, a very progressive, a very well-functioning council for a very long period of time, and our community gets the benefit of that. They also understand that having elections every 2 years is part of that stability, is part of the opportunity for them to vote in individuals rather than people who are on tickets, to vote in independent candidates rather than party political candidates. These are all the sort of things that make us stand out as a better form of local government. And I really hope the state government looks into that rather than just saying, oh, well, it might save a couple of dollars. I am absolutely confident that our community wants the best local government it can get rather than worried about a couple of bucks here or there. I think, well, I calculated it as 0.01% of our budget is spent on elections. And I don't think spending 0.0005 on the elections is going to make that much of a difference to the community. What will make a massive difference to the community if they end up with dysfunctional, argumentative councils that are party political and really don't answer to the community, but answer to the people that help them get elected in the first place. And that is the sort of local government that exists over East. And luckily, it's not the sort of local government that exists here in Fremantle.
Well said, Councillor Williamson-Wong.
I'm glad Councillor Sullivan got to go first, even though, to be clear, I did win on the buzzers. I did. My name was up the top. I wasn't old enough to watch the ABC show, so I have no idea what you're referring to. But I do think that when we look to local government in other states, we might be an anomaly, but as Councillor Moughlin put it, our anomaly serves us very well. And I've personally been served very well by the fact that we have 4-year terms with a half spill every 2 years, because that has meant that when you come onto council, you can understand the culture, the systems, the processes that exist behind local government. Being a councillor is a crazy job because there's no training until you're in it. And without that corporate knowledge sitting behind, the continuing councillors, it would be impossible and completely dysfunctional for the first few months, I believe, after an election would take place. So I'm in full support of keeping the status quo. I'm a big believer that people should be voting, and I think maybe one of the proudest things ever is that in my election, the voter turnout in Coastal Ward was the highest voter turnout in all of Perth metro area in that local government election. Clearly I was very controversial on that ballot paper, but people should care about voting. There is a link, I think, between compulsory voting and this party politics that we don't need in WA and should be investigated, because maybe that's not true. Maybe there are systems that create party politics in local government over East. I wouldn't support party politics coming into local government in WA, and I wish Walga very well in their advocacy, because this ball has started rolling, it seems, from the state government, and it's clear that the local government sector don't necessarily support it. So yes, good luck, Walga.
Any further comment? Councillor Moughlin?
Yeah, I'm just going to close and I'll just give Councillor Williamson-Wong another ABC series, Grassroots with Mayor Cole Dunkley and the shenanigans that went on there. And it wasn't filmed or based on a West Australian council, or on Fremantle would be boring as batshit and no one would watch it. And yeah, there's a reason for that. And we've got a well-functioning system, and I think it should remain as is.
Yeah, I believe Councillor Graham moved the item, so but that's all right. No, it was worth it to get the recommendation for another ABC
I'm just
series.
trying to think of the other ABC show that was, with what's his name in?
Yeah, that's
No. It was a country. They were out there in the,
if
they were on
you're,
a river or somewhere.
I'm taking that as a question, just in case anyone else wanted to comment on this item. Seeing no further comment, I think all the points were very well covered by the people who spoke, so I won't say anything in addition. So all those in... Does Councillor Graham, do you want to close on the item? Okay. All right. And we'll put the late item agenda up for a vote. All those in favor of what's before us? That's unanimous. That hopefully sends a great message to Walga. See, confidential business and no closure. Wait, no, sorry, no confidential business. That means we'll close the meeting at 8:20.